minutes is what we'll go.
Long? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of long. So.
Yeah, that's good.
But I thought that 45 minutes was going to be a long time to talk this morning, and before I turned around, they were giving me the 5-minute warning.
It goes pretty fast, doesn't it? Jim Collison, we're live from Infotec 2016 here in Omaha. We've been interviewing the keynote and session leaders, session speakers for the afternoon. I'm here with Chrys Sullivan, and Chrys, welcome to the interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, good to have you here. Let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us kind of who you are, where you're from, what you do, those kinds of things, just so folks get to know you.
Yeah, sure. So I am the founder and CEO at Useagility. It's a user experience design firm. We specialize in designing complex business products, websites, mobile applications, SaaS-based systems. So I kind of start by saying also what we don't do. We're not marketing. We don't do advertising or digital. We're not really a digital agency. We help companies. We partner with product managers and with the development teams and companies to help them build, simplify their products and build stuff that actually works.
That's really cool. And so, when we think about the user experience, how challenging has that been now that everything's moving small? How challenging is that to go from, we've had to kind of go from the web to totally mobile, and there's some even newer forms coming out when we think about virtual reality and some of those.
Yeah.
So how challenging is that just when we think about the phones? Does that require kind of a switch in the way you're thinking, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's interesting because we follow a process called user-centered design, and it really puts the user at the center of the design process. So we're constantly putting ourselves in those shoes, designing concepts and then testing them and iterating them with users. And so when you think about how a user is consuming something, whether it's at a desktop or on a watch or on their phone, the process that we follow to kind of create things that work is the same. I will say that keeping up with standards, as far as interaction design standards for native mobile apps, as well as for other devices, it's tough to do if you're not living in that world every day. So that's something I really have to challenge. We challenge our clients and the designers and the developers who are our clients' office, and as well as my own designers, to just be out there using stuff constantly, because we know the process of what it takes to kind of absorb what we need to know about how people behave and use devices, but really being on the cutting edge of that new technology or the new whatever's newly enabled by technology itself and is becoming a standard, keeping track of that and being able to recall it and use it, it's tough unless you're in it every day.
Well, and the form factors, I think I'm wearing a Microsoft Band 2, which is very different than a Pebble, which is very different from than Apple's watch.
Yeah.
And that wearables it's sticking, it's going somewhere, right? I think we're gonna have wearables. So you guys are challenged in the future here, right?
Yes, definitely. I think about we're in Kansas City, so we proudly serve, I say on our website even, we proudly serve Kansas City, the Silicon Prairie, and beyond. But, Garmin is in our neck of the woods. Yeah. And, they're really leading in the space of wearables. And the amount of the design expertise they need to have on hand and how much time they must spend testing with people on those devices. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I wear one of those. I have a Garmin 220, which is a running watch that has got written completely. When you think it's not smart, it's smart, but it's not the way we think it's smart. In other words, written at a software level that's a little bit lower than this level here. Mm-hmm. And so they even have a bigger challenge because they don't have all the useful tools. When you think of UI, they're dealing with much less UI to save battery.
Yeah,
right?
Limited space, limited number of controls.
Right.
So it's good challenge.
It is. What are you speaking on here today? What brought you to Infotec?
Well, I am talking today about user-driven innovation. So when we are challenged with the opportunity to innovate, how do we do that? Do we do that as a company kind of internally and closed and assume that we know what the problem statement is and we know how to solve it? Or do we follow more of a user-centered design or user-driven innovation process where we're hypothesizing a problem statement, and then we're going to go out and talk to users and kind of validate that and poke holes in, and then actually revise the problem statement to make sure that we're solving the right problem. That's, you got to be solving the right problem or you'll never get to the right solution.
Right.
So that's kind of what I was talking about today.
Yeah, listen to your audience. That's kind of in the podcasting world. That's what we say. Who's your audience, and are you listening to them? Mm-hmm. Are there some methods that are better that you're finding when in getting that feedback from companies? Are there some methods that work better than others?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you say that. My background is in technology product development, technology design, and so I was using that as an example. It can also apply to services or processes that you're innovating. But for instance, something that works. When you're doing research, conducting research with end users, one-on-one interviews is by far a better methodology to use than focus groups. Sometimes I talk about the F word. F word. Focus
F
groups.
being for focus,
Yes.
right? At that point, yes.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Just want to make sure we
Yeah,
don't have
oh,
to put an
yeah.
explicit rating on
Right. Focus groups, the F word. Focus groups can be good for initial product marketing concept feedback, but once you get to a design that you're testing, or you really, it's better to do one-on-one interviews. So maybe your users are your employees in your company. Set up 30-minute sessions with them and go sit with them. Ask them how they use the software tool. Ask them to show you how they like to use it. Maybe ask them to show you a competitor that they like. And you learn so much more, and then you can kind of line all those interviews up and see the trends coming out of it. And it's really hard to get your arms around trends in a group think focus group. So that's just a little example of a kind of a practical, tactical thing that we can all do.
I think it's a good one. We get feedback on our platforms from our users directly. I have social responsibilities, and I'm in the groups all the time, so they know they can talk to me. I don't even ask for feedback anymore. They just give it to me, which knows you're at least reaching the right audience at that point. And so is that, if I'm taking that feedback, that natural feedback that comes in and grouping it and kind of saying, hey guys, I'm seeing some trend problems in this. Is that the same thing, or do I have to intentionally go out and interview 10 people and do it that way? What's the difference between the two?
Well, I think that you kind of want to identify a purpose for your research. So are you trying to find out if the way that you've redesigned your corporate intranet, if it's the right design? You don't want to just sit back and let feedback come into you, because you're not really sure that it's representative. And so have a purpose to your research. And then when you have a purpose, you kind of want a little bit of a plan outlined on how you're going to get it.
Yeah.
And that's back to kind of the one-on-one sessions. If you want to just get general attitudinal feedback, you can ask open-ended questions. But if you want to find out if something's usable, if it actually works, you need to do task-based research, where you're actually giving the user the website or the product or the prototype and asking them to conduct tasks and then just watching them. So you're really observing their behavior. Sometimes observing behavior is much more insightful than actually listening to what people say. Because people will say, oh yeah, that looks great, I love that. And then you say, well, show me how you would get to the place where you'd find out what job postings are listed across your company on the corporate. Well, I don't know. Here? No, I don't know. I don't know. I can't find it. So observation is really, observation is important. Having intent behind kind of your research so you can be sure to answer the questions.
Facebook does a lot of this automatically now. They're always testing with you and throwing out new things. It's oftentimes you don't even know you're doing it. In that world, that's not one-on-one, right? That's kind of big, gigantic focus groups. Yet they've had some pretty good success. How does that fall into when we're doing user, and the users don't know we're doing user testing against them, and yet they get some pretty good numbers back as far as that kind of. What's any thoughts on that?
That's really more kind of quantitative analysis and optimization. So we're looking at maybe A/B testing. Does a certain page or message perform better than another? And that's where you're doing really this testing in a live environment and gathering information behind the scenes on what produces the best business outcome. And so that's something. The kind of research I was talking about in the innovation stage today was maybe very early concept stage when you're just formulating your idea. But once you launch that idea and it's out there, you want to constantly optimize. And that's where this kind of live A/B testing and then kind of quantifying metrics on what works best is a great way to continue to evolve your product forward.
Okay. So a little bit earlier in the process, as we get to them, test some things out, maybe even in a wireframe, trying to put some pieces together.
Exactly.
So Useagility works. You guys have worked with a bunch of different companies. When we think of, since it's Startup Week and we're kind of talking about startups here, who have you worked with in the startup space, and what kind of experience has that been around startups?
Yeah, we have a breadth of companies. Our sweet spot tends to be in that kind of mid-sized technology company. Work with a few, really large companies, but then also startups as well. Later this month, I'm actually going to be at the with the Techstars at the Sprint.
In Kansas City?
Yes, at the Sprint.
It's okay.
But kind of coaching and offering some one-on-one sessions for them as far as the user experience design. A really cool startup we've worked with recently is called Palmco. They're not actually from around here, although some people from here are associated with them. But it's a campus security device. So there's a key fob that students carry that attaches to the app on their phone. Those connect, and if you get into trouble, all you have to do is click your key fob. It connects to your phone and calls campus security, so you know where they are. We've also worked with startups that are in the we've worked with some funded startups that are kind of roll-offs of larger companies, so where they want to kind of spin off something that's a little bit different from what they do. And so we also worked with a company called Briefcase that was also out of one of the Kansas City incubators as well.
Cool. Yeah, startups always start, when they start, they're very simple. One idea, maybe two, very clean and crisp. They have great success. And then inevitably, they add more features. They get more complicated. It adds to the UI, right? It gets more complex. How do you advise in some of these spaces to hey, you were good at this, stay good at this and not necessarily move on? Or maybe they should, but is there that space there where sometimes they outgrow the UI that made them great now has become so cumbersome that people can't use it?
Yeah.
Do you advise in any of those situations at all?
We do, and that happens not just with startups, but with large companies as well that see opportunities and have feature proliferation to the point where people can't figure out how to do the thing that they first came to do. And we do advise in that space. And I think it's a matter of strategic decision-making by the product manager and the business owner to say, what do we want to do? Do we think we can meet multiple needs and create that, have it usable and market and sell it effectively? But kind of getting back to another user-centered design principle that we talked about this morning in the innovation workshop is to really listen to the user's needs, because sometimes users ask for enhancements or features, and instead of just adding those willy-nilly, listen to them and then understand maybe root cause, because sometimes there's a root cause that if you solve it meets the demands that 3 new features would have done in a more elegant and simplified way.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is interpret what you're hearing from users with a business mind and with a design mind, so that instead of just tacking on 5 new features because people asked for it, you're really being intentional and you're filtering that and making strategic decisions.
Yeah, no, that's great. Taking a step back and adding a layer of analysis in there to say, hey, instead of just this feature, like what are they really trying to get at? Right? Where are they really trying to go, and what are they really trying to get? And sometimes I think I see this all the time. Sometimes we get users who go, "Wouldn't it be cool if we could have?" They're not really serious, right? They just they want to tack on features that they want to look or appear smart. And I think you need to filter some of that out too?
You have to have a filter, and so the business needs to have a filter that says, what are our criteria? What are our revenue drivers? Because what we want to do is spend our time and money with features that are going to push revenue. What converts people to buy, or what converts engagement, and really put that business filter on what we ought to do, so that when we're designing and adding to products, we know that it's hitting the bottom line in a positive way.
It's super hard though, right? Because sometimes those most engaged users are the ones who bring those ideas, and then because they're the most engaged users, they believe that should be done, and then when they don't get it,
Right.
they socialize that,
Right.
and turn other, right? I mean,
Right.
we've seen that happen
It is.
a lot.
It's hard. And,
Yeah.
doing surveys, collecting feedback, and kind of looking at it a little more quantitatively can help kind of give you that gut check, make sure that your gut check is right, and that you're listening to, you're doing the 80-20 rule. And putting your eggs in the right basket.
We had a user in a foreign country that has less than 1 million people ask for some functionality to be done to purchase an item, which would only be, we would sell literally one item in that country, and it's hard to say no to that customer. And then they're pretty vocal in the group, like, hey, I can't get it here. And so it's tough. And I think you have that institutional discipline at times, like you said, revenue doesn't create, and it's hard to tell those users sometimes, like, I'm sorry, we're putting revenue in front of you. Mm-hmm. That doesn't feel very good. You don't say it that way.
No,
course,
I mean, I think that, designers, user experience designers, product designers, people who are passionate about their products, they have a lot of empathy for their end users. It's hard to say no when you can empathize so much with what they really, really want to do. And, that's where you kind of, you have a roadmap, and you talk about where those things may or may not fit into the roadmap. And you try to invite those end users in to participate productively, in other ways still that may, be meaningful to them and help them out.
Yeah. No, it's a challenge nonetheless, right? It's one of those challenges to keep everyone engaged.
And especially with startups, it's easy to get distracted, by those things.
Yeah.
And hard to stay focused on your original purpose.
I know, and doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just really feel like you're headed in the right direction, and it's hard when you've got users, pinging you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about talent at Gallup, we are short software developers. So we created our own high school internship program around software developers. Mm-hmm. In the world of design, in Omaha or maybe down in Kansas City, are we doing the right things to develop that talent pipeline? And if we're not, how could we be?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I was at a meeting of business owners a couple weeks ago in Kansas City that was sponsored by KC Next, and there was a panel talking about the real talent gap, and that a majority of students who are kind of coming out of STEM related, engineering, math, and science are international students, which is wonderful. But how do we get more of our local students to identify with a career in technology and then to take the right steps, back in middle school, elementary school, high school, and college to get there? I think that we're beginning to get traction around coding, and there seems to be, and robotics and engineering. I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a gap, I guess, because I'm constantly looking for great designers and design thinkers and problem solvers on more of the technology design side. I think we have a huge gap, and aren't a lot of young people don't understand that they can have a career in technology that's not coding. That they can have a career in designing and figuring out how this functions, interaction design and visual design. And so talking with people about this at a younger age and introducing them to all of the disciplines that are needed, not just coding, I think is important. Also, women make pretty good designers. And I know a lot of really great men designers also. But women are empathetic. They're a lot of times good communicators and good listeners.
Sometimes sense the need before you know
it. And so it's an area, women have been behind in the technology scene, tremendously so. And maybe design is an opportunity to pull them back in to be a part of this ecosystem.
Yeah, so much so, as our group grows, we're actually thinking about creating a design section.
You should.
And so we'll have coders, developers, software developers, right? That's our need. And so that'll always be the biggest section. But we're beginning to think, okay, how could we do an early identification of design? Maybe I'll ask you that question.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. But how would we do early identification of this talent at the high school level? And then we'll add that in, and that the design folks will do a lot of that work that they need to do for our coders. Our developers will then develop that.
That's right.
And then we'll also start looking for project management talent out of those kids as well.
Absolutely.
So it's areas ready. So give me, if I was going to think about how would I do some early identification, what are some ways, just off the top of your head, in high school, what would I look for, do you think?
I think that critical thinking and problem-solving skills are at the heart of design. I think people think of design a lot. When they think of design, they think of the visual design, the creative aspect, the colors, the graphics, the font, the look and feel. That's important for in technology space. But design really is deeper than that. It's how does something function? It's how do you move through a product or a website or a mobile device? How does a user, engage with something? And I really think that getting at some problem solving skills would be a way to assess, and maybe it's both kind of assessing a person's intuitive desire to problem solve and to think about things in many different ways, and finding a way to package that up. I like that idea, and Useagility would like to work with you on solving that idea.
Good. Well, let's see what we can do. We're excited about it. We've had 40 kids in our high school program, Omaha kids, in our program last year. We're rewriting all the software, and we hope to have 75 join us this year. We think we can do that. You have to retool. We were scalable up to 40. We had 2 rooms that hold 25. The room that we're moving into, talk about problem solving, the room that we're going to move into will fit 150. So we're good for 2 more iterations of this as we grow. But we had to rethink, okay, now if we got all the kids in the same room, what can they work on? Talk about a design, right? So they're going through some processes of figuring out, now how do we scale this out to the next level?
One of the things that's I think really important for people as they're learning is hands-on experience. So maybe you could partner with a company or to kind of get students out in a practical real-world environment where they can be working on projects and kind of hands-on, while other groups are back in that classroom space, and then I don't know, some creative sharing
some interesting
stuff.
One of the things the students, so 14 high school students will be on campus for the summer working 6 weeks that we pay them to be on, and they're going to be working on this new platform, one of the things, and we're hoping to get their input on this thing and say, okay, if some of you are going to work on this again next year, how would we design it and build it in a way? The code stuff they'll work on, but how do we build it in a way that we can get maximum effectiveness of everybody in the room at the same time with a combination of BYOD, as well as we'll provide some devices for some of the students. So we've got a little design challenge ahead.
Good. I am confident that you're going to solve it.
It'll be tons of fun, and it's fun to each year kind of change it to make it grow. We started with just 17 kids our first year. So it's been fun to do it. We've just, because we think high schoolers need a shot at this, and you mentioned this earlier, we're going to back the bus up to junior high here this fall and do some innovation events at junior highs in the Omaha area and see if we can't keep these kids. The numbers say they drop off in junior high. That's when we lose them. 6th grade, 50-50, diversity is is when we talk about STEM. In 7th grade, it just flushes out. So
I have 2 junior high aged children.
There you go.
And so there is something that happens in that stage where they're forming opinions and decisions about what they think they may want to do someday. And even those with a lot of opportunity, given to them, being able to be afforded to them by their parents and their schools, they still don't have visibility to the different jobs and opportunities that are available to them. So taking that message out and saying to people, hey, did you know that there's such a thing as a user experience designer, and you get to design how something works, and here's a little project that would test whether this is interesting to you.
No, we're excited about it. We think that's a good way to go.
I think it's incredibly important work that's going on to set the stage for the future of businesses who need people, qualified, skilled people to hire.
Doing that work. We think it's super important. And so at Gallup, we do everything ourselves first and make sure it works. And then we go out and consult on that as well. Last question for you. Where do you think the future is going? Next 5 years as we think ahead in design, are there trends out there that you're seeing that will change in the next 5 years? Or is this pretty much just iterations of the same thing going forward when we think about design?
Well, there's so many topics about design. And 2 things are kind of coming to mind. I mean, one is, we kind of mentioned this earlier, the way that people are going to be controlling and interacting with things is much different. Gesture-based controls for things that you don't even touch. Voice command and voice prompt, I think, is going to continue to be something that you're going to see more and more of. The other side of the kind of, if I'm thinking about UX trends, I think that there will be continue to just be an evolution of technology organizations understanding and applying user-centered design, so that they won't just be saying, I have a user experience designer, get that person, here's where you live, but it'll really be kind of an infused part of an organization that you think about the end user and involve them throughout the life cycle of the product development process. And so I think that that's really going to continue to be a trend.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. We just think about the Internet of Things, right? And when we think about all the pieces that are coming with IoT, and last year that was a big topic, and it's kind of settled down, which means we're off the Gartner hype cycle, and we're on our way down, which means things are just getting interesting.
Yeah.
At that point. And so
That's right.
when we think of from thermostats to sensors when we come in the house, to proximity gates, to some of those kinds of things that tell us what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I think of even an Amazon Echo device that only responds to a voice.
Exactly.
Which is interesting, right?
Well, in Kansas City, there's the Cisco Smart Cities project that's going on, and kind of a living lab to kind of figure out how they can use kind of all those sensors that are built in, and kind of ideate and build new innovations around that as well.
Yeah, well, and all the data that comes with that too.
That's right.
How do we mine through that and get intelligence things out of those? So, well, Chrys, thank you for taking a few minutes. It goes very fast.
It does.
It?
Well,
it goes
I
very
get to
fast.
talking. And,
no, it's great. I appreciate it. We'll remind everyone, if you're watching live, just hang tight and move down to the next video, and Joe will be up next. And we want to say thanks for watching. And Chrys, thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome.